Hi, my name is Taylor Ruth, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I'll be talking today about some of the research I've been working on with my colleagues at Doane University, looking at the influences on industrial hemp purchases. Now, when we are talking about industrial hemp, this is not the same as marijuana. In fact, it contains less than 0.3% THC, which is that psychotropic property that we find within marijuana. These hemp plants can be used for a variety of purposes, ranging from cosmetics and skincare to CBD oil that can help reduce anxiety or promote sleep, as well as even joint supplements and pets. It can also be grown for fiber reasons that can then be used for rope and for clothing and for fabric. This industry was worth about $1.1 billion in 2018, and we saw consumer demand increase by 20% last year, and both of these numbers are expected to continue to grow in the near future. Now, here in my state of Nebraska, growers were allowed to start applying for licenses starting in 2019. But while that bill was up to be approved, there was some pushback from local politicians. One of our state senators said this bill was a Trojan horse for marijuana, and he strongly associated industrial hemp with marijuana. Our governor, Pete Ricketts, is very opposed to legalization of medical marijuana, citing that this is a dangerous thing. Medical marijuana does not exist, and people show up to work stoned. So we're seeing in Nebraska there is this association between hemp and marijuana and pretty strong pushback against marijuana, which led us to believe that maybe some people in Nebraska would experience something called the spiral of silence, which really happens when people don't want to be the odd person out. Their fear of isolation can keep them quiet in social context when their ideas or their attitudes don't align with the group. Their willingness to express those attitudes really depend on their strength of the attitude they possess towards the topic, their perceptions of others' attitudes, as well as their perceptions of future trends and attitudes. And when they perceive others or future trends and attitudes to be aligned with their own, they are much more likely to speak up. And in this case, we have contextualized that willingness to speak up as actually purchasing and using those industrial hemp products. So the purpose of this study was to determine the influence on consumers' decision to purchase these industrial hemp products, looking at their hemp purchasing behaviors, their knowledge of industrial hemp attitudes, perceptions of others' attitudes, and perceived future trends and attitudes, and looking at how those variables, along with personal characteristics and knowledge, could predict industrial hemp purchases, so that way we as agricultural communicators and extension educators can better support those farmers, those growers, and those processors who are wanting to enter this segment of the industry. We did this research at Doane University. This was a paper survey that was distributed to students, and this was part of a larger project because my colleagues at Doane University ended up bringing some hemp plants to campus in their local greenhouse, and they needed to conduct an educational campaign. So this research was done with a census of students exposed to that campaign, but the research I am presenting today was done in the pre-test part of that study before they actually received that campaign. We had a response rate of 80% with 112 responses. Majority of our respondents were white females, they were freshmen, and they were from rural hometowns. Now, this instrument was partially adapted from prior research. The knowledge scale was research developed based off of a literature review of common misperceptions and misinformation related to industrial hemp, and it was reviewed by a panel of experts, and all scales were found to be reliable. Now, when we were looking at past purchases, we found that only 35% of our sample had actually purchased at least one hemp product in the past 6 months. They had a whole list of products to choose from. The highest percentage of respondents reported purchasing makeup and cosmetic products, and that was 18%, followed by CBD oil. The rest of the products all fell below 10% of our sample having purchased those products, so most commonly makeup and CBD oil. When it came to knowledge was measured on a 20-point scale, but on average the respondents got about 8 of those questions right. They had slightly positive attitudes towards industrial hemp, but they perceived others to hold neutral attitudes, and they believed that future trends and attitudes would be slightly positive as well. Now, when we're looking at predicting hemp purchases, we used a logistic regression to look at, yes, they did purchase it, or no, they did not. And this model could account for 30% of the variance in the likelihood to purchase hemp, but only gender and attitude were predictors in our model, with females being more likely than males to purchase hemp products, and people with more positive attitudes, they were more likely to purchase those products as well. But knowledge, perceptions of others, future trends, hometown, and political ideology were all not predictors in the model. So the spiral of silence did not operate quite as we expected it to. Interestingly, too, our sample possessed positive attitudes towards this topic, even though their knowledge wasn't particularly high. Their perceptions of others' attitudes weren't necessarily reflective of these vocal politicians within the state, which might be due to who was in our sample. Similarly, these positive perceptions might be associated with age. We've seen younger consumers have been more supportive of marijuana legalization. It might be similar for hemp as well. Interestingly, too, we saw that cosmetics and women appear to be those drivers of industrial hemp purchases, which is not the same for what we've seen in past research related to marijuana or medical marijuana. So for practice, we really should be partnering with these producers and processors to help tailor communication towards these young women, emphasizing health and beauty benefits for if they are growing their hemp products for CBD purposes. And for research, replicating this across the state of Nebraska and nationally, and conducting focus groups to better understand how these group dynamics can impact both support of industrial hemp and purchasing of industrial hemp. So that is all that I have for today. I would love to chat with you more about this topic if you have any questions. My email is on this slide, so please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.